Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well. Today we have got a big episode. We need to talk about this, and this is something that I can guarantee pretty much that can always be improved on and needs to be top of the agenda. So let's dive into it. And I can't believe we haven't done an episode about this sooner. So we are kind of talking about sales today. We are talking about marketing. We're talking about communication. We're talking about very exciting topics about how can you make more money, sign more clients, yada, 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 that type of stuff. But what this comes down to is communicate and value effectively. How can you communicate the value of your offer or your service or your product? This is a topic that is so wrongly done, so misunderstood, is so kind of jumbled together, and is often really poorly executed on. And so I'm inviting you today to listen to this episode, but most importantly, take a lot of action from it and actually go and do something with it and put it into practice, and hopefully come and tell me that you've made some sales from it or that it's made it all make sense. So why is this an issue? This is a big issue in terms of effectively communicating your value offer because people don't understand where the value lies. So you've got a few problems with this. Often we have the issue of we don't know where the value of the offer and the product lies. We don't know how to communicate that. And then there's also this other bit around I am the person who delivers the product, or I'm the person who creates this thing, and therefore everybody should know about it. But what is often lost is that no one actually knows about it and no one really fully understands what it is that they can do and why it would benefit them. And when you have those three things, some people just have one, but most people have three things sat there in their business, that provides a real wall and a block for sales to happen. And often when people come to me and they're like, we want more sales and I want to have this thing and that thing and this automation running and we want all this to be leads coming in the funnel and it'll all be working out. You can do all the work you want in the world around that. But if the value is not there and we can't communicate that value and the value isn't felt by the person you're communicating it to, it will inevitably not sell, or it won't sell as strongly as it could do. And that's typically the most realistic one. If you can get the communication decent, you can often then get a few sales and you can have a business running that's making money. But if you're wanting to scale things or you're growing things or you're like, I want to get to a certain point, this whole idea of optimizing time and this whole idea of getting more out of the same thing that you do, 100% comes down to this. 100% is about actually optimizing things. And one of the ways you really optimize something is about making sure that your communication of message is correct and really understanding what is the value that you're offering to someone and for them to undertake that themselves. I've kind of touched on where people go wrong with this, but just to reiterate, one of the biggest issues that I see with people trying to communicate the value of their service or their product is around how it impacts someone's life. That is the bit that people always forget. So they might communicate an immediate kind of solution-based opinion around value. But what they won't do is actually go a step further and talk about how does this actually allow somebody to live their life differently? How does it allow them to make more money, save time, be more happy, feel fitter, whatever the outcome is? It's the how. It's that next piece that is often just badly done or is kind of thrown in there as a last minute thing. So it'll be like, yada, 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 it'll change your life. Which for people, that just doesn't work, right? Then that when people add that on the end, it just really doesn't make sense. I'd also suggest that if you're thinking about looking at value, is I want you, before you go into this episode, I want you to list down what is valuable about your offer. So pick one service that you offer. Pick a high ticket service. If you have a high ticket offering in your business, I'd say go for that. But you don't have to, pick any service you've got in your business. List out what the value of it is. Now, I'm not talking about the monetary value, although you can do that. Like, what is the monetary value of it? What do they get? Now, I'm not saying deliverables, although you can, list out the deliverables. But what I'm more interested in is bullet pointed, what is the value that they are receiving? Because first off, we need to work out, is the thing you're selling actually valuable? Which some people are selling stuff that's not particularly valuable. And I'm not saying that means you shouldn't sell it, because that's up to you as to how you run your business and your ethics. But for most people, if you have a value-driven business and you want to make impact in the world, it's important that you actually think about how valuable is something. Often that will come down to making sure the right person gets their hands on it. Often it becomes not valuable if the wrong person buys the wrong product. And that's where most business owners go wrong. Most business owners are selling stuff to people where either the product market fit's not right, or the person buying it is not the match for the product. So really think about, where does the value lie in what you're offering? And it's okay if you have something in your offering that is the main value driver, and then other things beneath it sort of support that and help the transformation from happening. So it might be that you have some things in an offer that isn't necessarily that valuable on its own, but it's about what does it do in combination with things. And that, for a lot of people, like, they'll ask me, why can't I just buy X, Y, and Z thing from you? Like, maybe it's like an hour of your time, or something that they think is going to be the magic fix to like whatever their problem is. And often I will turn around and say, because that alone is not going to do X, Y, and Z result that you want to. The value is not there. And they might think the value is there, but you then have to communicate why the value isn't there. So hopefully you've now got a list of things that are explaining what the value is in the product you have. Like, where is the value? What does value look like in your offer? And again, do not just focus on the money. The money is not the main. It might be for your offer, depending on what industry you're in, but for a lot of you, money will not be the only value driver. If you have that there, I'm now going to talk through sort of 8 to 10, I think, ways and parts of the process that you can communicate value. Because you've got two different bits. You need to understand what the value is, and then I then need you to think about, how do you communicate that value? And then we have a separate piece, which is, what do people actually then relay about the value, which is a separate thing. So when you're looking at customer advocacy and you're looking at referral and you're looking at building sort of further on from this, there's a separate piece that is about, what are people actually sharing? What are people receiving from what you're putting out? But for now, I want us to focus on the middle section around, how do we communicate that value effectively? Because some people will have identified and can identify what the value is, but what they can't do is therefore communicate that very well. So, first up, going back to what I just said earlier about who is the product for, that needs to be something that's very clear. You need to understand who the audience is for this service. What are their needs? What are their challenges? What are their goals? What are the things that they've tried before? What have they purchased before? Like, doing a very clear understanding of, what is the person who is meant to buy this, ideal client you might say, but for that specific offering. And it's okay for you to really go into depth for specific offerings. This is why I said pick your high ticket one, because often the high ticket thing is the thing that's sold the worst, and it's the thing that people aren't really very good at communicating the value of. So picking that one can work really well. I then want you to think about, what are your unique selling points? Now, when I say that, I'm not suggesting that you need some bizarre technology or some patented thing that makes it different. I just need to really understand, and for you to get clear on, what are the features, what are the benefits, which you might have already done from the first exercise I've suggested to you. But then I want you to connect those to specific pain points or triggering's not my word. Some of you are gonna when I say triggering, I don't mean like negative emotion and like spiraling out of control. What I mean is a trigger point in someone's brain that will help them understand that that product is for them. So it's not about shaming people. It's not a negative thing. Trigger points can be really positive things in a buyer's journey, where people are understanding that, this is for me. I get this. This is like targeted towards me. A great example of this is when you look at financial investing courses, right? Financial investment advice, support in that. There are probably 3,000 there's more than that, but let's just take 3,000 as an example. There's 3,000 investing courses on exactly the same topic. Maybe it's like beginners 101 to invest in, right? Each of those can sell massively well. Those 3,000 courses could still make millions and millions of pounds or dollars each. But what will depend on whether they do it or not rightly is whether or not there's trigger points in their sales communication that actually makes sense to the specific person they're trying to speak to. Because if it does, the person will go with that over any of the other 3,000 offerings. And these can be tiny little things. And this is why when I say taking time to really get this right is so important. And you will probably do this exercise 3 or 4 or 5 times over before you get anything that is worthwhile doing. You might hit on the jackpot straight away. But this is something that like business owners who are growing and scaling are constantly doing. This needs to be a reoccurring activity and something that I do with clients all the time, something we do in a business internally all the time. It's constantly trying to figure out, right, well, is that trigger point working, or does that make sense, or does it not? And as the world moves on and as things change and as, you know, world issues crop up, the effectiveness of those pieces will change. So this is why it's an ever adapting thing. But I want you to really think about, what are the pointers that will help someone's brain go, oh, this is for me. Oh, that's a valuable asset to me. Going back to the investing course, right? If somebody is, let's just say they have ADHD, for example. If someone can find an ADHD-led, like maybe someone has ADHD who is leading this investment course, they will find that immensely valuable. I'm not saying everybody, I hate generalizing, but I know some of you say, can you use examples? So here we go, we're using an example. If they can see that there's a common ground there, right? There's a real connection point. It doesn't, for most buyers, it depends on the buyer's type, but for most buyers, if that is there and present, it doesn't really matter what other the value is. The brain will probably be pulled to that because it likes connection, it likes community, it likes a common ground, and we'll say that is valuable. Because people hold different values to different things and different features, which is why when you're trying to put monetary value on things, it doesn't work, because everybody's start point and end point to that is completely different. So what you need to be able to do is communicate a sort of decent variety of value that the value add is to the product or service, but then allowing other people to dictate what that means to them. Which is why when someone's trying to sell you something, maybe in a very direct way and that you don't understand or you haven't seen before, people often just do not get it because they're like, well, it doesn't seem valuable to me. But if they've previously understood that and have internalized themselves what they believe the value of the product or service to be, and then are sold to after that, you can often lead to a real high buy-in and a high conversion rate. I'm already veering off topic. I'm trying not to get too in the weeds of real in-depth advanced sales strategy and consumer behavior chat. But just, I want you to think about, where can you express value and how do you connect what somebody's experience and what someone's problem is, what somebody's kind of agitation is, what someone's symptom that they're experiencing from the problem that you solve, and how does the value meet together? And where can you join lines and draw collections to, versus just having a random set of outcomes and a random set of problems and just saying them all out loud. Next up, messaging. You hear people talking about messaging all the time. Some of you will be like, oh, goodness me, right, we're still talking about messaging. You need to make sure that when you're trying to convey message, a compelling message, let's just say that, it has to be very clear and it has to really be focused to them. So we don't want messaging that's about you. It's not about your business. It needs to be messaging that is focused on them. When someone has a particularly strong launch, if you are someone who's a service-based business owner, or maybe you're a coach or a consultant, and you might watch people selling something, especially if it's like a one-to-many offering where they're selling like a course or a group program or something like that, and you might say, wow, they've launched this new thing, and maybe it's new as well, like it's not something they've had all the time. If it's really new and it's done really well, you can pretty much guarantee that the reason that has happened is that they've spent time really understanding the messaging and getting the messaging solid. If you come in with a real clear, concise message that is compellable and believable. The believable piece is important, right? It's got to be believable for your consumer. That can massively, like, people, if they have a compelling message, will massively jump through various hoops in the sales process and just check out and will straight away buy. And there's various science as to why that is. But if you can get a message that really resonates, you will collapse a hell of a lot of time and you will lose a lot less money in terms of waiting for people to buy. When we're looking at messaging, language is super important. Really understanding what language are you using, and is that language what the other person wants to resonate with? This is a topic we have tons and tons of issues with, right? Because if you're very good at what you do, you might use acronyms, you might use certain advanced language terms or industry terms. Let's just say you're a lawyer, for example. This is where you can really lose loads of money. But most people have, we all use words that actually in day-to-day life people are not going to maybe understand. Using language that someone else doesn't get, you immediately have not got a compelling message. When I talk about creating messaging that really works, try and make it as simple as possible so that a 3 or 4-year-old, a 5-year-old or 6-year-old can really understand what you're saying. The more complex you get, the more difficult it is to craft a message that actually sticks. Yes, for some people you can, if you are targeting a certain person in your industry, and there's various things you can do, right? I'm not saying that every single message has to be really simplistic, but in order to do this well, there's no reason that it needs to be complicated, is what I'm trying to say. You can actually do it really well without causing loads of internal issues with yourself. Does it feel professional enough? And does it sound this? Does it sound that? Okay, so you've now got like clear understanding of who your offering is for, what the points are of why someone is going to buy it, and that you've got a messaging set that works. Now, that in itself is a lot of work, and getting that right. And I'd really encourage you to refine stuff. Like, most of you listening to this, you will have this in some degree, but you need to just refine it. So go through and refine this further. Then we need to understand in the real world how this is playing out. So for all of the connection points that you've made between the trigger point and how the value connects to that, we then need to see real world examples of how this is playing out and how this is working. So yes, that can be case studies, testimonials, reviews, social proof, that sort of thing, building credibility. There is an element of if I can, you can type vibe, which I'm not agreeing with, but I'm just saying that from a consumer bias perspective, depending on what they're purchasing, for some people that is enough. Again, remembering that different people are going to respond to different things. So for some people, seeing some product that's got 20,000 reviews, if you're selling, I don't know, a beauty product, for example, that can be enough for someone to go, bingo, I'm in, let's go for it. We'll see what this is like. I'm going to buy it. For other people, they will be massively skeptical of 20,000 reviews and go, I'm not really bothered about that. But having them there in presence is really important because it will help communicate value, especially if you can use specific words that come from clients that are not your own. So they're not the brand. And it's okay if it doesn't really fit the brand message. If you're like, they use this word, but we wouldn't use that word. That's good. Because you've then covering 2 different ways of probably saying something similar, but you're using 2 different options, which is massively, massively important. So something that a lot of you will do to communicate your value, and what you might be doing now, is creating content. So you're probably creating content to try and sell your offering, and you're like creating content and you're like, yeah, come buy this thing, it's really good. And you're like trying to share kind of around the topic. What I'm going to say to you is, in order to clearly communicate the value of your offering or service, it needs to be engaging content that people want to swipe through, or they want to watch through, or they want to really understand. And what I mean by that is, you need to talk to the actual offer. You need to talk to frequently asked questions. You need to talk about pain points. Although we don't like using the word pain points, but what I'm suggesting here is that you should have some identifiers that you know are things like, remove the pain. The pain bit is the bit that people get like uncomfortable about, I think, which I kind of don't really get. At the end of the day, like, most people are buying something to get out of either discomfort, frustration, anger, or they have a desire for more. So think about it as a desire point, like what is something that someone wants to change, but really targeting content that is specific to that. It doesn't have to be objection handling content, because that can be slightly different. I'm not saying it has to be as direct as that, but it needs to be a variety of content that people can understand what the offer is and how that would fit in times of their life. So having a blog post, having a podcast, doing a video, having a carousel, all these different pieces will help people make up an idea in their head as to whether or not that makes sense. And really utilize the idea of, think about the different type of learners, right? Think about who's visual, who's kinetic, who's auditory. Like, what are you providing a way for people to get the same information or somewhat very similar information, but through different medias? Because that's really, really important. I hope you're still with me. Like, I hope you're enjoying this and kind of really connecting the dots. I'm trying to make it very simple in the sense of like, how do you actually communicate the value of your offering? Throughout this process, I want you to keep going back to the kind of first and second pointers that I went through around understanding the audience, understanding the selling points, and yes, hopefully your messaging is going to sit in there. But those first two are so important about understanding what actually is the value. So let's just say you are at a point in the sales process where they know what the offer is, they're aware of it, but they're sat not moving, which is what a lot of business owners come to me about and say. They say, we've got this group of people, we've got X amount of thousands of people on an email list, and no one's moving, no one's budging, like that's just sat there. Personalized communication is something that can really help deliver value. So if you segment your target audience, or you take a segment of who could buy your service. So let's just say you're a social media manager and you can service loads of people. You can service loads of industries. Let's just say that you segmented your personalized communication to dentists, private dentists. You will be able to communicate on a very different way the value you offer specifically to a private dentistry organization than you will trying to talk to everybody. But you can use ways to understand their unique challenges. And when people feel like you're understanding their unique challenges, that's when you really can connect people and their interest perks up. That's when, if they feel like you've got a solution tailored to their industry or tailored to their kind of set of problems, that is when you will really start to get people who are prepared to pay a lot of money. And this comes back to, think about this, right? If you have, people are quite happy to pay £100 or £47 for, let's just say, like a workshop on how to sell more things in your business as a generic topic. And people can take that away from any industry, they can probably apply it to something. But if someone comes up to them, or even after that, right, they've paid the 47 or the 100 quid for this workshop, but then comes up to them and says, well, if you pay me £10,000 or for £50,000 or however much you want to charge, but we can make something specific to your industry, specific to X, Y, and Z thing, people see the value in that. People are prepared to pay that. The perceived value becomes way higher. Now, there's a whole other argument around what is the actual value, because I think we're having a real change of circumstance where people are starting to realize that actually a lot of generalist stuff does work and does apply, and it's not always that we do need personalized stuff. But in terms of how do we communicate value, and that's what we're talking about today, personalized communication really works. The way that we show up and share unique situations with a unique group of people that helps them feel like, I have got a tailored solution here, you will catapult your way of them understanding the value versus not. And that's all this is about. It's about how do we increase the speed in which it takes, or how do we decrease the speed in which it takes for someone to fully understand what the value is of the thing that you're offering. Next up, you will hear me say this quite a lot, and you will hear lots of people talking about this idea of you need to talk and communicate benefits and value are not features. But people still do this all the time. And don't get me wrong, there's certain buyer types where they do like to hear the features. I like to hear the features. I like to know the details. I like to know what's going on. I like to know how it all works together. But some people, and for most people, they need to know what the benefits are. They need to know what the outcome is after purchasing whatever they're going to purchase. So you being able to clearly articulate things is really important. Like, how does X thing solve X problem? How does it enhance so and so's life? And I don't care whether you're selling a SaaS product, whether you're selling some kind of software or tech thing, or whether you're selling pajamas. That needs to be really clear of what is the benefit. And it doesn't need to be around the features. Is it improving efficiency? Is it reducing costs? Is it saving time? Is it improving day-to-day life? Is it relieving pain? Is it being more comfortable in your own skin? Like, what is the actual benefit of the product? It's not about how do you make that happen. And for some buyer types, they will want to know that, but for most of them, they're not so bothered. So it's not about, right, well, let's just take the pajamas, for example. It's not about the fact that the pajamas are made from a 100% organic something silk, which is why that they're super soft, which means that they're really nice in the skin, which means that you feel really like luxurious and it really elevates your life, and you can sit on your couch on a Sunday afternoon and you feel like $100 million and you're living your best time and you're really happier, right? People aren't really that bothered about all of that. They're not bothered about the 100% organic so-and-so silk. Again, I'm generalizing, some people will be. What people are interested in is how does that happen, or why does it happen, or what will that make them feel like at the end of it, which is that whole piece we just discussed about a Sunday afternoon, and they're sat there, and really helping people visualize an outcome is really helpful. And it's often the piece that people just don't go the extra mile to doing. If you're B2B, if you're selling to directors, getting them to understand, like, you're sat on a Monday morning meeting, and instead of you spending 20 minutes of that really valuable meeting going over, what projects and things didn't happen last week, instead we have this SaaS product that will give you a report, so that by the time you get to your desk on Monday morning, the report's already there, everybody's been distributed, and therefore you can send an email and that addresses that. I'm really just making things up, okay? But like, you understand, getting really clear on what do you understand your product or service can do, but then how do you explain that to the people that you actually want to buy, is something that's very, very important. You may be sat here thinking, this is all great, but you're essentially really talking about niching. And I want to just say to you that in terms of selling something, I am, right? In terms of saying, how do you deliver value when you want a scale of something, I am suggesting that you niche. I'm not saying your whole business has to niche. I'm saying in terms of selling something. If you're happy for slower sales, then that's fine. And I'm not saying that there won't be outliers to this, okay? But what I am saying is that if you have an offering that you really want to make a difference with, that you really want to sell in a huge way, if you're going to put ad spend behind the things that we've spoken about today, if you're going to make content, you're going to put ad spend behind it, you're going to get a hell of a lot better return if you have a clear, concise group of people you're trying to target than if you're trying to target everyone. Now, you might turn around and say, well, May, you work with people all the time in a variety of different industries. And the answer to that is yes, I do. But I'm also not trying to build a certain size of business. And if I focused on a certain area, it would make a lot more money and it would make a lot more sense. And I'm not saying that either of those are right or wrong, but I'm saying you have to understand that if you want a certain parameter of sales process time, of volume of leads going through your funnel, like if you want a certain arrangement of those things, you have to be prepared to have a certain output at the end of it. And whilst I'm not saying that the only way to do X, Y, and Z thing is to niche, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that for a lot of people, that can really help. And once you have, the joy of this is that once you have a funnel in place, that you can automate this, that works for, let's just take private dentists for an example, as the social media managers, once that's in place and is working, there's nothing stopping you from building another automated funnel that can be very similar, but for a different area. And you can have loads of different funnels that are all targeting different areas so that you don't have a business that you're just working in one sector or industry. Also, what don't get bogged down when you think about niching as that it has to be a certain type of business. I would encourage you to look at a certain type of demographic or characteristic or identifier. So, like for me, we massively cut out a whole bunch of people that I'm not speaking to who aren't value driven, who aren't people who want to live a good life whilst they're building something. There's a whole group of people who want to hustle their way and, you know, really not enjoy the whole process because they think that's part of how they build a business. Therefore, my stuff's never going to interest them. We omit a whole group of people. I often talk quite directly about supporting women, and whilst I'm not saying that I have to 100% exclusively work with women. The reality is most of the time I do, and so that then blocks off another group of people. So just because you might think, well, if you're selling to multiple industries or sectors, that means that you don't have a niche. I would argue that you can look at ways of segmenting people and customer groups that isn't just based on where do they work or what business are they trying to build, or what industry do they sit in, or what sector do they belong to. There are many other ways that you can position this and sort of present your market in a way that will speak to a certain group of individuals. So, another point to round off this, in terms of how do you communicate value, this is a one that I think people do either really well or really badly, or don't do at all, but can massively help depending on who you're selling to. Not everybody, but most people really do well on this. So measuring and communicating return on investment is really, really key. Some people love money, some people love numbers, some people love statistics. They want to see something. If you can give them a statistic, they're immediately like, whoa, yeah, I get this now. Don't underestimate the power of being able to say a statistic and people being like, bingo, I get what you do. Don't shy away from collecting data. Don't shy away from understanding what the numbers are in your business. So, how do you quantify the value of your products and services? But we're not doing that by what you perceive the value to be. We're doing on what is the return on investment? What time do they get back? Or how does the efficiency improve? Or how much more money do they make? Or what does their health statistics reduce or increase by? What does their weight reduce or increase by, if that's something that maybe you're in the health or wellness or fitness world where it's something to do with weight. But using metrics and data and analytics to measure performance will help to communicate a tangible benefit, which again, for some people, will help them choose your business over someone else. But I would say one of the really useful things of communicating ROI is that sometimes people will just get it immediately versus you having to take them on this whole journey of what you do and how you do it and why you do it. And some people will just instantly be like, okay, that makes sense. That makes total understanding of what I'm trying to make happen here. I am going to end it there in terms of how many other things we could talk about. I hope that this has given... I feel like we're at a nice point where you can go away and do some stuff with this and actually action some things. I don't want to give us 20 ways to communicate value, because actually these 10 you can create a massively profitable business from and be really thriving. So I'd really encourage you to go away and do some stuff with this. But I would also like you to tweak and change things. You need to test what people respond well to. And this will change as the years go on, as days goes by, and things happen, external factors that you can't control in your business. But really changing up what you do and testing, is certain words working? Is the language working? Is the messaging working? Am I actually saying what the offer does? Is what I'm saying actually what someone else is getting at? A prime example, right, is me talking about sustainable scaling. I will often say, help people sustainably scale their business. We help with sustainable business growth, yada, yada, yada. Some people are assuming that I'm talking about the environment and eco-friendly and how do we make sure that businesses are still here in 15 years' time. But from an environmental perspective, when I'm sat there going, that ain't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sustainability in terms of longevity and in terms of burnout and in terms of how do people have a reliable business. that in itself, that one word can set people all over the place. So really making sure that you come down to what words are you using and is the language actually sticking or not is really important. And the other thing I wanted to leave you on was the idea of what results can you expect from doing this well. Because you might now be a bit like, oh, it's quite a lot of work and feels a bit like boring. But I just want to remind you, like, this stuff is the difference between you, 10xing the amount of revenue you get from the same product. If you're someone who's got a really solid offer and you're like, I just need more people. I just need more people to get on board with this. I need more people through the funnel, whether that's a passive thing, whether it's not a passive thing, whether it's your one-on-one thing. Like, you're like, I want more people. Like, people need to have this. 95% of the time, it comes down to not being able to communicate the value effectively, paired with disjointed sales process and sales sort of system. But that's a separate thing. Most of the time, it's like, how do we display value? How do we communicate value? How do we make sure that value is being translated and that the other person is receiving that value? So go through the things that we've spoken about. Maybe rewind the podcast and listen to different sections as you're doing them. But I'd really suggest that you go and do something with this episode, because inevitably, whenever I go into a business, and it doesn't matter whether they're already doing 7 figures or whether they've just started, this is the thing we talk about. This always comes up in some way, shape, or form, because it massively changes how so many different functions in your business roll out their activity. So don't skip on this, because you're wasting time. You're wasting team time if you're just putting loads of resource into marketing and into sales, and then this has fallen short. It's like, what's the point? Spend the time getting this right. If this is something that you know you need to do and you want to really get right, I'm happy to do this with you. This is something that I look at with people. You can book a half day strategy day or a full day strategy day, depending on how much we want to look at, and do we want to look at other business areas and functions and how it all works together. But this is definitely something we can do. And this is something where people will say to me, like, oh, I've been trying to get this for 3 years or 5 years, even like 5 years. People are like, I've been trying to get this and we haven't managed to get there. And we can come in a few hours, we can like get it down. So don't sit there and try and do this on your own if you feel like you've gone round and round in circles for ages and ages and you just don't quite get it. Or if you feel like something used to sell really well and you used to have this amazing revenue stream and now it's kind of disappeared and now it's not working as well as it was, and the funnel isn't working and the ads aren't working, and you've maybe just hit this roadblock where you're like, I don't know what's wrong, why is it not working? Often it will come down to this, and we can definitely make tweaks and change it to make sure that it's relevant and it is a desirable item for people to purchase in this year and beyond. Take care. I hope you have a fantastic week, whatever you are up to. Feel free to go back and listen to some other episodes, because there's a few other episodes that we've done that link to this. So if you're really fired up from this episode, we've got a lot of kind of sales stuff and quite a bit of sales strategy, not loads, but there's quite a few episodes for you to go through and have a listen to that will help aid kind of your work around this. I will speak to you next week. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.